The year I turned 18, I was holding an acceptance letter to the University of Texas like it was a live grenade, ready to blow a crater between my life in the Appalachian Hills and a future in Austin. When Maya saw me off, her nails dug so deep into my palm that they left little crescent moons. She was smiling when she said it. "You even think about running off, Nate, and I swear I'll burn us both down to charcoal." The train roared through a tunnel, the darkness turning the window into a blurry mirror. I saw my own reflection floating there, and Maya's too. She was leaning against my shoulder, pretending to be asleep, her breath so light it felt like a feather brushing my neck. But I knew she was awake. The hand resting on my thigh would twitch every so often, her nail scratching unconsciously at the denim. It reminded me of that stray cat back home that was always trying to sneak a piece of jerky from our porch, a tentative, almost affectionate kind of threat. "Nate," she said suddenly, her voice muffled against my shoulder, warm and close. "You think the girls in Austin are all like perfect, with those tans and blonde hair?" I looked down, but could only see the crown of her head, a swirl of jet black hair, like a tiny vortex trying to pull me in. "What are you even thinking about?" I squeezed her hand. "You think they're any prettier than you were after you stole my mom's cold cream?" She let out a little giggle, her shoulders shaking. She looked up and glared at me, her eyes shockingly bright in the dim light. "That's not the same thing. I was just messing around. Those girls, they're born with it." Then, she gave my side a sharp pinch. "You listen to me. When you get there, you keep your eyes to yourself. Or else." She didn't finish, just darted her tongue out to slowly wet her lips, that familiar, dangerous mix of sweetness and venom flashing in her eyes. This was Maya, my childhood sweetheart, the most beautiful flower in our dead-end corner of Kentucky, and the one with the sharpest thorns. She'd always been like that. One minute she'd rip her own heart out for you. The next she'd make your skin crawl. Or else what? I tease her. "You gonna tie me up and lock me in the back room of wherever you're working?" "You wish," she snorted, leaning back against my shoulder. Her voice dropped to a whisper, almost to herself. "I'll just get you nice and fed, and we can fall apart together. Be simple that way." The train suddenly burst from the tunnel. A violent wave of sunlight crashed through the window, so bright it was blinding. In that white-hot glare, I clutched the acceptance letter in my pocket. It was just a thin piece of paper, but it felt heavy enough to break my back. The edges were soft and worn from being handled so much, stained with the sweat and warmth of my body, of Maya's, and of the mountains we were leaving behind. "My name is Nathan, and for 18 years, my life was the dirt roads and the smell of damp earth and livestock back home." The train tracks felt like they were splitting that life in two. The second half was Austin, a place I'd only heard about, a place where even the streetlights were supposed to smell like money. And Maya, she was the living, breathing, burning umbilical cord connecting the two. It wasn't until I got to Austin that I realized sunlight could be sticky. It wasn't like the sun back home, which was bright and clean. Here, the light bounced off the glass of 1,000 high-rises, making you dizzy. The noise of traffic, of people talking, of 100 unidentifiable sounds all blended into a thick, simmering stew that never quite cooked. Maya had been here for 6 months already, working as a massage therapist at a place called Lotus Touch Spa. She tugged at the hem of a floral print dress that was clearly a size too small, trying to look like she owned the place as she pulled me from one bus to another through the crowded light rail. Her fingers weren't as calloused as they used to be, but I could still feel the tiny hangnails around her cuticles scratching the back of my hand. She rented a room in a part of West Campus locals called The Hive. The hallways were so narrow you had to turn sideways to pass someone. The walls were layered with years of peeling flyers, and the air smelled of damp mildew mixed with cheap disinfectant. The room was barely bigger than a closet. A metal-frame bunk bed took up nearly all the space. The old bed sheets were washed so thin you could barely make out the faded rose pattern. "There, you get the top bunk," Maya said, dropping her worn duffel bag on the bottom mattress with a thud. "I'm on the bottom, and don't be rolling around up there. If you fall, I'm not catching you." I looked around the tiny space. Her things were piled in a corner, a battered suitcase hanging open to reveal a few brightly colored tops. The only window looked out onto the grimy brick wall of the next building. "This is where you live." "What? Got a problem with it?" She shot me a sideways glance while stuffing stray socks and underwear back in her suitcase. This place is $450 a month. That's enough to feed you for half a year on potatoes back home. She didn't wait for an answer, just dragged a plastic basin out from under the bed. You're disgusting. Go take a shower. The faucet on the left is hot water. You need your key card for the power, so don't waste it. She tossed me a plastic card with a Lotus Touch Spa logo on it. Use mine for now. There's not much left on it, so be quick. The communal bathroom was at the end of the hall. The walls were covered in yellow stains, and the constant drip, drip, drip from a leaky faucet made the silence feel even louder. The hot water sputtered, and it had a metallic, rusty taste that seemed unique to city pipes. I watched the dirty water swirl around my feet and disappear down the drain, carrying away the dust of my journey and leaving behind a vague, unsettling emptiness. When I got back, Maya was squatting on the floor, pulling things out of a large red plastic bag that was peeling at the seams, out a bottle of sriracha, a pack of sausages, a few wrinkled potatoes, and a small bag of rice. What are you looking at? She said without looking up. You're cooking from now on. I get off late. I just want to come home to a hot meal. The grocery store is a right turn out the door, then a left at the third intersection. Don't let them rip you off. Learn to haggle. That night, we were crammed into that metal bunk bed. The springs on my top bunk groaned with every movement. Down below, Maya's breathing was steady. A single, thin mattress board separated us, and I could feel the bed frame shift whenever she turned over. The city's light pollution bled through the dirty window, casting wavering, blurry shadows on the ceiling. Nate, she said suddenly from below, her voice soft. Can you smell it? The disinfectant on these sheets. I sniffed the air and grunted. When I first got here, that smell made me want to puke, she said, her voice laced with exhaustion. Now I think I'm used to it. People are pathetic, aren't they? I didn't say anything. After a long silence, I thought she'd fallen asleep. But then she spoke again, her voice a ghostly whisper. You have to make something of yourself here. You hear me? Otherwise, everything we're going through, it's all for nothing. In the darkness, I stared at the ceiling, watching the blurry shadows dance and fade until they were swallowed by a deeper black. College life unfolded before me like a painting that was too bright, too colorful. My own life was a pendulum swinging between the Hive and the UT campus. During the day, I sat in pristine, well-lit classrooms, listening to kids in Nike and Adidas talking about the latest iPhone and which bar on 6th Street they were hitting on the weekend. They smelled faintly of clean laundry, and their hands were soft, their nails perfectly clean. I sat in the back, wearing a slightly stretched-out t-shirt Maya had found for me at a thrift store, taking notes as fast as my hand could move. The professor was explaining calculus, the equations on the board like a foreign language. But my mind was running its own calculations. I was over budget on groceries by 30 cents, Maya's cheap shampoo was almost gone, and I had to try and fix the leaky faucet in our room tonight or the landlord would tack it onto the rent. Nate, you spacing out? My classmate Ryan nudged me with his elbow. His dad owned a chain of car dealerships, and he radiated an aura of easy money. Club Rush is tonight. Want to go check it out? I heard the girls on the dance team are something else. I forced a smile. Can't. I've got stuff to do tonight. What stuff? So mysterious. You got a secret date or something? Nothing like that, I said, packing my books. Gotta go home and make dinner. Ryan let out an exaggerated gasp. Make dinner? Don't you live in the dorms? Oh, you've got a girl shacked up somewhere. He winked. All right, Nate. Didn't know you had it in you. When do we get to meet the lucky lady? I didn't bother explaining. I just slung my backpack over my shoulder and walked out. A girl shacked up? I guess you could call it that. Shacked up in that mold-scented hive, watered with sweat. Back at the apartment, I washed the rice and chopped the vegetables. The exhaust fan in the cramped kitchenette whirred loudly, but it did little to stop the greasy smoke from the frying pan that made me cough. Maya usually got home late, well after midnight, carrying a complex bouquet of smells, cheap perfume, the herbal scent of massage oils, and the faint stale odor of cigarettes and alcohol. She was often too tired to speak, just kicking off her heels and collapsing onto the creaky old couch. Her ankles would be swollen, and I could see the faint blue lines of veins under her skin. I'd bring her a basin of hot water for her feet, and she'd stretch them out, her eyes closed. Had a creep today, she said suddenly one night, her voice raspy. Tried to grab my thigh. I scared him off with my cuticle knife. My stomach clenched. The washcloth in my hand almost fell into the water. She opened her eyes and saw my expression, and it made her laugh. Look at you, all scared. You think I can't handle myself. Her toes wiggled in the water, playfully splashing my face. I told him, listen, buddy, my boyfriend is a student at UT Austin. He's going to be a big shot lawyer. You try anything and see what happens. I looked at her, at the forced cheerfulness, and felt a heavy lump forming in my chest. I could only look down and scrub her swollen feet with more force than was necessary. The water was a little too hot, making her skin turn pink. In the dim light, I could see tiny lines forming at the corners of her eyes. She was only 19. What about you? She asked. Any girls at school, batting their eyes at you? Oh yeah, I said without looking up. Tons of them. The homecoming queen even, begging me to go out with them. You wish. She kicked a splash of water that hit me square in the face this time. You're probably drooling in your sleep just thinking about it. I wiped the water from my face and looked at her, smiling. She smiled back, but then her smile faded, and her voice grew quiet. Her head lolled to the side against the couch cushion, as if she'd fallen asleep in an instant. Her makeup was smeared, and there were dark, bruised-looking circles under her eyes that she couldn't hide. I gently dried her feet and carried her to the bed. She mumbled something, curling into my side like a kitten finding a warm spot. Outside, the city's neon glow never slept. It sliced through the gap in our cheap curtains, casting shifting patterns of light across her face. Asleep, the hardness in Maya's expression was gone. All that was left was exhaustion and a trace of the childish innocence that belonged to a girl her age. I looked at her and remembered a summer back home. We'd stolen a watermelon from a neighbor's patch and run down to the creek, sitting with our feet in the cool water as we ate, the juice running down our chins. She'd said, Nate, one day we'll get out of here. We'll see if it's true that people in the city eat meat every day. Now we were out, and there was meat. It just came with a price that made it hard to swallow. One afternoon, I didn't have class, so I went to the area near Lotus Touch Spa. I wanted to wait for her, to surprise her, and take her to get those brisket tacos from a food truck she'd been talking about for weeks, but always said were too expensive. The spa was on a side street. It wasn't a big place, but its pink and purple neon sign blinked with a suggestive glow, even in the daylight. I stood in the shadows across the street, feeling out of place. A steady stream of men went in and out, some in suits carrying briefcases, others loud and reeking of alcohol. After a little while, I saw Maya come out. She had changed out of her tight-fitting work uniform and was wearing a lavender-colored sundress I'd never seen before. The hem swayed gently as she walked. She had a smile on her face, but it wasn't the one she showed me at home. This one was practiced, professional, and empty. A man in a loud floral shirt with a slight potbelly walked out with her. His hand landed on the small of her back with an easy familiarity. Maya sidestepped him gracefully, avoiding the hand that wanted to linger. Her smile didn't falter as she said something to him. The man laughed loudly and finally turned to leave. I was frozen to the spot, my feet feeling like they'd grown roots. It felt like all the blood rushed to my head and then drained away just as quickly. Maya turned, and she saw me. The smile on her face froze for a second before she hurried toward me. Nate, what are you doing here? She asked, a little out of breath. Her eyes scanned my face as she reached for my hand. I pulled it back instinctively. Her expression changed in an instant. The carefully constructed ease vanished, replaced by a sharp, defensive glare. What did you see? Nothing, I said, my voice hoarse. He was just a regular client, she explained, her words rushing out. A good tipper. I can't exactly be rude to them when they're leaving, can I? He touched you, I said. My voice was quiet, but the words landed like stones. Maya stared at me, her chest rising and falling. Suddenly, she laughed, a cold, bitter sound filled with something like despair. And what if he did? Nate, how do you think I make money? You think sitting in your pretty classroom, listening to your professors, pays for your life? Pays for this. She tugged at her new dress. Pays for me to have something decent to wear so I don't embarrass you. Her words were like needles stabbing at my ears. I wanted to argue, but I couldn't form a single word. She was right. Why did I have to question her? I was using her money, living in the apartment she paid for. My entire clean, respectable future was being built on the back of her dirty income. I'm tired, Nate. Her voice suddenly dropped, heavy with exhaustion. Can we not fight out here? Please? She didn't try to take my hand again. She just turned and started walking. Her silhouette against the hazy Austin twilight looked so thin, but her back was ramrod straight, refusing to bend. I stared at the small, crookedly embroidered flower on her dress, and the tower I had built inside me. A tower of guilt, shame, and a disgusting, possessive anger came crashing down. I ran after her and grabbed her from behind, pulling her into a hug. I held her so tightly I could feel the sharp angles of her bones. She struggled for a moment, then went still. Her body, at first rigid, slowly went soft in my arms. I'm sorry. I buried my face in her neck, smelling the cheap, cloying perfume from the spa that clung to her hair, and underneath it, her own faint, familiar scent, like wildflowers and dust. She didn't turn around. Her voice was thick when she spoke. Nate, you remember this. My body might get dirty, but this, she reached back and poked me hard in the chest, right over my heart. This is clean, and it's for you. If you think it's too dirty, then you tell me now. We can go our separate ways. No one holds anyone back. That night, we didn't get tacos. In the dim, musty hallway of our building, we were like two desperate animals, tearing at each other, clinging to each other. Maya's nails left red scratches down my back. She bit my shoulder hard, her voice choked with sobs. You're mine. Nate, you're not getting away. Sweat, tears, and 1,000 unspoken emotions mingled together. The roar of the city outside faded into a distant hum, leaving only the sound of our ragged breaths and the tortured groaning of the metal bunk bed. In my 3rd month in Austin, in that moldy hive, my tragically possessive girl I confirmed, in the cruelest way possible, that we were each other's only ally in the world. We were like two weeds growing out of a crack in the pavement, relying on each other's warmth and filth to survive, struggling to reach for a sliver of sunlight. Afterward, as if nothing had happened, she hopped off the bed, naked, and dug 2 sausages and a couple of potatoes out of that red plastic bag. Make dinner, she said, her voice still raspy. I'm starving. We squatted by the shared stove in the hallway, one of us peeling, the other chopping. The grease from the sausage sizzled in the pan, the smell instantly chasing away the ever-present scent of mildew. Maya suddenly nudged me with her elbow, pointing out the window toward the glittering lights of the downtown skyline. Hey, Nate, look at those lights. Don't they look like piles of money burning? I glanced up and nodded. Yeah. When you make a lot of money, she said, looking at me with shining eyes, the first thing you're going to buy me is a gold chain. A real thick one. She made an exaggerated shape with her fingers. I'll wear it everywhere, blind all those condescending jerks. Her ridiculous demand made me laugh. Aren't you a little tacky? I am tacky, she declared, lifting her chin. It's my man's money. I can be as tacky as I want. The potatoes hit the hot pan, and a cloud of white steam rose between us. Her profile was a little blurry in the steam, but her wild, vibrant energy was seared into my memory. I knew Austin was a huge city, but our world was tiny. It was small enough to fit on a creaky bunk bed, around a single stovetop that smelled of sausage and rice. But in this small, damp world, Maya and I were everything to each other. We were each other's creditors, and we were each other's only light. The water in the pot bubbled away, like the sound of a million desires simmering all across the city. And we were at the very bottom of that pot, about to start climbing. 2. The urban encounter. Ryan and the guys found out about Maya. Eventually, it was my fault. That weekend, they decided they had to celebrate me being the first guy in our group to get tied down, and they ambushed me right outside the hive. I was in the middle of arguing with a vendor at a street market over 50 cents. Maya was convinced I was terrible at haggling, so she'd snatched the bundle of kale from my hands to do it herself. Her voice was sharp, honed by her time at the spa into a tool that could cut through the thickest noise. Nate, Ryan's booming voice came from behind me, full of the thrill of discovery. Maya's hand, still clutching the kale, froze in midair. The shrewd, combative look on her face shattered, replaced by a kind of panic confusion I had never seen before. She instantly let go of the vendor's shirt, subconsciously smoothed down her worn-out t-shirt, and glanced nervously at my friends, avoiding the eyes of these clean-cut guys in their brand-new sneakers who smelled like expensive shampoo. Well, Nate, this must be the famous girlfriend. Definitely. Down to earth, Ryan said with a wink, his eyes darting between Maya and the bundle of kale. An unnatural flush crept up Maya's cheeks. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She quickly shoved the kale into our grocery bag, tugged on my sleeve, and whispered, "Your friends?" I'm just going to go up." Without waiting, she practically fled into the dark hallway, her posture stiff and awkward. In that moment, a nauseating cocktail of emotions churned inside me. Was it shame? Was it a pang of pity for Maya? Or was it anger at my own powerlessness? Probably all of the above. Ryan and the guys dragged me to a cheap diner near campus. After a few pitchers of Pabst Blue Ribbon, the conversation inevitably circled back to Maya. "Dude, she's a firecracker. I like her. Where do you even meet a girl with that kind of spice?" Another one of my roommates, Chris, asked, leaning in with a smirk. I took a long drink of beer. The cold liquid did nothing to cool the irritation burning in my chest. "We grew up together," I mumbled. "Childhood sweethearts." "Damn, man, that's epic." Ryan clapped me on the shoulder. "But listen, Nate, I'm just being real here. She's got a lot of character. Doesn't really fit the whole UT vibe, you know? You gotta focus on your future, man. Don't let anything drag you down." The words "drag you down" felt like a physical blow. I snapped my head up, staring at Ryan's face, flushed from the alcohol. He probably didn't mean it maliciously. He was just stating what he saw as the obvious truth. But that truth felt like the damp, mildewed walls of the hive clinging to my skin. I knew he was right. Maya and I were like two mismatched gears, one trying to force the other to turn, creating nothing but friction and a horrible, grinding noise. I got back late that night, reeking of cheap beer. Maya was awake, sitting on the edge of the bed. In the dim glow of the single lamp, she was peeling a potato. The peel spiraled down from her hands in one long, continuous, paper-thin strip. She didn't ask where I'd been. She didn't complain about the drinking like she usually would. She just looked up for a second as I stumbled in. Her eyes were terrifyingly calm, like a deep, dark pool of water in a ravine, still on the surface, but with dangerous currents swirling below. "Your friends," she said suddenly, her voice flat. "They think I'm an embarrassment to you, don't they?" The alcohol buzz vanished. "No, of course not. They were just messing around." The one in the Nikes, she cut me off, her hands never stopping their work, the knife making a soft, scraping sound against the potato. The way he looked at me. It's the same way my clients look at me when they're trying to decide if I'm worth a tip. She twisted her lips into a bitter, self-mocking smile. I guess he's right. Someone like me doesn't exactly belong with a student from the great University of Texas. "Maya," I raised my voice, a wave of nausea rolling in my stomach. "Don't say that." "Then what should I say?" She finally stopped, looking directly at me. The lamplight cast deep shadows under her eyes. "Nate, let's stop kidding ourselves. You're a kite flying higher and higher. And what am I? I'm the dirty string holding you down. If the string breaks and you fly away, that's great. But what if it doesn't? What if it pulls you back down to earth or—" She paused, her voice dropping, laced with that familiar, sickly sweet threat. "What if I just decide to pull you down into the mud with me?" She stood up, put the peeled potato in a bowl of water, and walked over to me. She reached out and brushed at some imaginary dust on my shirt. "So, Nate," she whispered, her breath hot against my ear, smelling of raw potato and cheap soap. "Be a good boy. Don't make me become the string that ruins you." Okay. That night, we tangled together again on the narrow bunk bed. Maya was more aggressive, more desperate than ever before, as if trying to physically brand her anxiety and fear into my very bones. Afterward, she lay on my chest, crying silently. Her tears were hot, scalding my skin. "Nate," she sobbed, "you're all I have. If you leave me, I'll have nothing. Absolutely nothing." I held her tight, feeling the trembling of her thin shoulders. The city hummed its endless song outside, but in our little room, there was only the sound of her suppressed sobs and the frantic drumming of my own heart. In this massive, in different city. We really were each other's only life raft. The thought was suffocating, yet it brought a strange, perverse sense of comfort. My relationship with Maya was like a set of rusty, tightly interlocked gears, making an out-of-place but persistent grinding noise within the vast machinery of Austin. In the days that followed, a fragile peace returned. I continued my commute between campus and the hive. Maya kept working late at Lotus Touch, but something had definitely shifted. Maya started checking my phone more often. When I was in the shower, she'd push the door open, claiming she needed something, but her eyes would dart around suspiciously. Our conversations were now peppered with questions like, "That girl in your class," or "the one you were walking with today." One time, I was half an hour late coming home because of a student government meeting. My phone had died, so I couldn't call. When I opened the door, I found Maya sitting in the dark, the pale, ghostly light of her phone screen illuminating her face. "Where were you?" she asked, her voice devoid of any emotion. I explained, and she just listened silently. Finally, she stood up, flicked on the light, and even managed a smile. "Let's eat. The food's getting cold." I barely tasted that meal. I knew this was her way of showing she cared. She was like an insecure porcupine, raising all its quills, wanting to get close but terrified of getting hurt. This possessive, almost pathological love was exhausting, but it was also a cage I couldn't escape. Every time I thought about pushing back, about demanding a little space to breathe, I would see the deep, profound loneliness and desperation in her eyes, and the words would die in my throat. Guilt and the feeling of being needed were like two venomous snakes, wrapping themselves tighter and tighter around me. The turning point came on a Friday night. Maya had a rare night off, and we decided to splurge and go to a night market. We got separated in a dense crowd in front of a jewelry stand. When I finally pushed my way through and found her, a sleazy-looking guy was hitting on her. "Hey, beautiful, all alone. Let me buy you a drink," he was saying, his hand reaching for her shoulder. Instead of her usual sharp-tongued retort, Maya flinched and took a step back. Her face held an expression I'd never seen on her before, a mix of fear and panic. Her eyes darted around frantically until she spotted me. A wave of relief washed over her as she ducked behind me, grabbing my arm with a desperate grip. "He won't leave me alone," she whispered, her voice trembling. In that instant, a strange mix of protectiveness and masculine pride surged through me. I puffed out my chest, stood between her and the man, and tried to make my voice sound steady. "Hey man, she's with me." The guy looked me up and down, probably decided I wasn't worth the trouble, and walked away, muttering under his breath. The crowd continued to flow around us. Maya was still clutching my arm, her nails digging into my skin. I looked down at her. She was looking up at me, her eyes shining with what looked like a mixture of relief and, was that admiration? "Nate," she said quietly, "that was really hot." Her frightened expression and her complete trust in me at that moment felt like a beam of light cutting through the oppressive, suffocating atmosphere of our relationship. I suddenly realized that out here, in this complicated world, she wasn't always a feral cat with its claws out. She could be vulnerable. She needed protecting, and the fact that I could provide that protection gave me a powerful, undeniable sense of purpose. That night, Maya was exceptionally gentle. On the way home, she held onto my arm, resting her head on my shoulder like a little bird that had finally found its perch. Even later, in bed, she was tender, her kisses soft and lingering, a world away from the desperate, almost violent encounters we'd had before. "Nate," she murmured as she drifted off to sleep, "you have to protect me like that. Always." I watched her sleeping face, a whirlwind of emotions inside me. The heavy burden was still there, but now, there was something else mixed in with it. A faint, fragile sweetness. It felt like I'd been fumbling in a dark tunnel for a long time and had just seen a pinprick of light at the far end. I just didn't know if it was the exit or the headlight of an oncoming train. A few days later, I came back from class to find Maya home early, humming to herself as she cooked. On the table was a brand new shoebox with the iconic Nike swoosh. "For you," she said, wiping her hands on a towel, a proud smile on her face. "I see all your friends wearing these." I opened it. Inside was a pair of the latest Air Force 1S. They were expensive, probably more than half her monthly earnings. I was stunned. Where did you get the money for these? Don't worry about it, she said, her eyes shifting away for a second. Just try them on. When I pressed her, she admitted that she'd taken on an extra-long session with a difficult, wealthy female client, doing hot stone massages for several days in a row to earn the extra tip money. I stared at the pristine white sneakers, then down at my own worn-out shoes, and I felt no joy, only a sharp, piercing pain. Those shoes were a mirror, reflecting my own incompetence and the price Maya had to pay in a world I couldn't even bear to imagine. You shouldn't have, I said, pushing the box back toward her. My voice was dry. I don't need them. The smile vanished from Maya's face, replaced by a look of wounded disbelief and anger. Nate, what? You think the money I used to buy them is dirty? That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? She yelled, her voice suddenly shrill. I'm trying my damnedest to do something nice for you, to help you fit in with your fancy friends, and this is what I get? Or is it that you just think I'm not good enough for you? That anything from me is beneath you? She had become the wounded porcupine again. The fight that followed was the worst we'd ever had. She threw a plate against the wall. She screamed that I was looking down on her. I felt helpless to explain, completely drained by a profound sense of exhaustion. Finally, her eyes red and swollen, she pointed at the new shoes lying on the floor. Fine, Nate. You're so high and mighty. You don't want them, fine, but you remember this. Every single thing you own, every class you take, every bite of food you eat is paid for with my sweat and my filth, and you will never, ever be able to wash that off. She stormed into our room and slammed the door. I stood there, staring at the brand new, glaringly white sneakers on the floor, then at the perpetually gray Austin sky outside our window. The air was thick with the smell of burnt food and the cloying perfume that always clung to Maya. Our love was just like those shoes, a beautiful gift bought at a terrible price. They didn't fit right, they caused unspeakable pain, but neither of us could bear to take them off. I knelt and slowly began to pick up the pieces of the broken plate. The edges were sharp, like the words we'd just thrown at each other. A shard cut my finger. A bead of blood welled up, but I couldn't feel a thing. Maybe Maya was right. We had already stained each other's lives permanently. The clean and the dirty were all mixed up now, impossible to separate. 3. The silent crack of the shoebox lay on the floor like a small, ornate coffin for the warmth that had just died between us. The slam of Maya's door still echoed in the tiny room, a shockwave that seemed to make the metal bunk bed tremble. The air was thick with the acrid smell of burnt stir-fry and the overpowering, cheap floral scent that always clung to her. I didn't go after her. My feet were rooted to the floor, stuck in a mire of guilt, anger, and helplessness. The cut on my finger from the broken plate slowly stopped bleeding, the drop of blood turning a dark, rusty red. Strangely, it didn't hurt, perhaps because the wound in my chest was wider, deeper, and bleeding much more. I knelt, picking up the ceramic shards one by one. Their sharp edges bit into my fingertips, leaving tiny new cuts. Then I picked up the shoes. The brilliant white leather, the clean lines, the famous logo, they all seemed to mock my pathetic, broke-ass pride. These shoes were bought with the money Maya earned in that spa with its tacky purple lights, smiling at men with critical, sometimes lecherous, eyes, massaging their feet, enduring God knows what kind of casual harassment. And I, the college student she supported with that blood money, was too precious and cruel to even accept her tainted gift. In that moment, I understood that Maya and I were two gears of different sizes, one desperately trying to make the other turn, but the rust and were only caused a grating shriek, damaging us both with every rotation. Maya didn't come home that night. I sat in the dark, listening to every footstep in the hallway, half hoping and half dreading that it would be her. My phone screen lit up and went dark over and over. In the end, I managed to send a single, pathetic text. Where are you? No reply. I finally drifted into a restless sleep on the top bunk, just as the sky began to lighten. It was a shallow sleep, filled with images of Maya's eyes, that mix of sweetness and venom, and the blurry, mocking faces of Ryan and my other friends. The next day was Saturday. I was woken by a soft, rustling sound. I opened my eyes and saw Maya below me, quietly packing a bag. She had changed her clothes and was wearing that same old, faded floral dress. Her face was drawn with fatigue, the skin under her eyes a bruised purple, but her expression was unervingly calm. It was a quiet that set my teeth on edge. "You're awake?" she said without looking up, her voice raspy. "I made some oatmeal. It's on the stove." I climbed down from the bunk and just stood there, watching her. She was trying to act like nothing happened, but the slight tremor in her hands and her deliberate avoidance of my gaze gave her away. "Last night, I started my throat dry. I stayed at Tiffany's. She cut me off, her tone flat. Tiffany was the only other girl at Lotus Touch she considered a friend. Her boyfriend's out of town, so I crashed on her couch." She finally looked up at me, managing a tired smile. "It's fine. It was just a fight. We screamed. We yelled, life goes on." She walked over, took my hand, and looked at the small, scabbed-over cut on my finger. Her brow furrowed slightly. "How did you do this? You're a grown man, and you can't even pick up broken glass without hurting yourself." Her voice held its usual note of complaint, but underneath it, there was a flicker of something else, concern. This fragile piece was more unsettling than the storm of the night before. I knew nothing had been resolved. The issues had just been shoved down, buried somewhere deeper and darker inside her. Our life seemed to fall back into its old rhythm. I went to school. She went to work. I cooked cheap vegetables on the communal stove. She catered to all sorts of clients at Lotus Touch Spa. But a faint, acrid smell, like smoke after a fire, lingered in the air between us. Maya started being nice, too nice. She stopped the sharp interrogations, the passive-aggressive questions. When I came home late, she would just say, "Food's on the stove." She bought me more things, socks, notebooks, even a new shirt, trying in her own desperate way to armor me, to make me fit into my new world, as if I could somehow bridge the invisible chasm between us. But I could feel it. Behind those calm eyes, the surveillance was more intense than ever. She would happen to need something from the bathroom while I was showering. She would accidentally glance at my phone screen while walking by. Whenever I mentioned any girl from school, her jaw would tighten for a split second before relaxing again. This silent control was like a spider's web, wrapping around me, suffocating me. I felt like a fly caught in the silk, aware of the approaching danger, but powerless to struggle. I started to dread coming home, dreading those placid eyes that held a silent, raging storm. The hive, once our only sanctuary, was slowly becoming a gilded cage. Meanwhile, my life at the university was expanding. I was a dry sponge, desperately soaking up knowledge. My professors appreciated my diligence, and my classmates gradually accepted the quiet, high-achieving oddball in their midst. Ryan was still his usual loud self, occasionally throwing an arm around my neck and saying, "Nate, you're looking good, man. Guess the girlfriend is treating you right, huh?" Hiv, hiv, hiv. I could only manage a weak smile, the weight of a guilty secret pressing down on my chest. The person I was in class discussions, confidently debating theories, and the person I was at the hive, tiptoeing around a pathological love, felt like two completely different people. This split was agonizing, and it created a strange distance between me and Maya. I still cared for her, I was still grateful, and at times I was still drawn to her fierce, untamed spirit. But the suffocating control was like rust, silently eating away at the bond we had forged out of shared desperation. The next explosion came on a rainy night. My department had organized a small academic symposium. By the time it was over, it was past 9. It was pouring outside. I didn't have an umbrella, and my phone was dead. Worried that Maya would be anxious, I ran all the way back to the hive. The moment I opened the door, I knew something was wrong. The lights were off. Maya was sitting alone in the dark, her face illuminated only by the occasional flash of lightning. In her hands, she held my old, battered laptop, my prized possession, the tool I use for all my schoolwork. "You're back." Her voice, cutting through the sound of the rain, was unervingly calm but laced with ice. "Yeah, the rain was crazy and my phone died," I explained, shrugging off my soaked jacket. "Academic symposium?" She interrupted, holding up my laptop. The screen was on, displaying a photo of me with a few classmates, including 2 girls, taken after the event. A friend had logged into his Instagram on my computer to send it to me. In the picture, we were all smiling, relaxed, and happy. "Looks like you had a great time, Mr. College Man." A cold, cruel smile twisted her lips. My stomach dropped. "Maya, let me explain. It was just a normal school event." "A normal event?" She shot to her feet, slamming the laptop down on the bed. Thankfully, the soft mattress cushioned the blow. "Does a normal event require you to stand that close to other girls? To smile like that?" While I'm at Lotus Touch, forcing a smile for a bunch of disgusting old men. "Are you off smiling like this for your pretty little college girls?" Her voice rose to a hysterical shriek. Rainwater dripped from my hair, cold against my skin, but it was nothing compared to the Arctic frost in her eyes. "You went through my laptop?" My own anger flared, the feeling of being violated overwhelming me. "Went through it. I'm your girlfriend. What's wrong with me looking at your things?" She rushed at me, her finger jabbing at my face. "I'm telling you, Nate, don't think you're hot stuff just because you're in college. Everything you have, I gave to you. Your tuition, your food, the clothes on your back. It was all bought with money I earned on my knees, serving other people. You don't have the right to hide anything from me." I wasn't hiding anything. It was a normal get-together. "Maya, can you please stop being so irrational?" Irrational? That word seemed to ignite the last of her sanity. Tears streamed down her face, mixing with the rain, or maybe my own dripping water. Yes, I am irrational. I'm a crazy, trashy bitch from the sticks who doesn't know her place. I'm not good enough for you, the big shot student. So why don't you go find one of your clean, respectable girls who could talk about books and philosophy with you? Go on, get out. She was sobbing, beating her fists against my chest. The blows weren't hard, but they were filled with the force of her despair. I didn't fight back. I just stood there and let her vent. Thunder cracked outside, the rain hammering against the window, providing a dramatic soundtrack to our ugly, painful fight. Suddenly, she stopped hitting me and threw her arms around my neck, clinging to me so tightly it felt like she was trying to merge our bodies into one. Her hot tears and my cold rainwater soaked my shirt. "Nate, I'm sorry. I'm just so scared." She buried her face in my chest, her voice muffled and trembling violently. "I'm so scared you're going to fly away and leave me behind. I'm scared I'm not good enough to keep you. You're all I have, Nate." In that moment, all my anger and frustration shattered against the raw, painful vulnerability of her words. My stiff arms slowly, hesitantly wrapped around her thin, shaking shoulders. I understood then that all her thorns, all her pathological need for control, stemmed from a black hole of insecurity deep inside her that could never be filled. We were like two hedgehogs in a storm, trying to huddle together for warmth. Too close, and we'd prick each other. Too far, and we'd freeze. That rainy night, we tangled together again in a mess of tears and rainwater. It wasn't the violent clash of before, nor was it tender. It felt more like a desperate ritual, a way to confirm our existence and ownership of each other through the sheer force of physical contact. Afterward, she curled up in my arms and fell into a deep sleep, like a kitten that had finally found its safe harbor. Her breathing evened out, but the tear tracks were still visible on her cheeks. I stared at her sleeping face, a cold, empty feeling spreading through my chest. I knew that some cracks, once they form, can never truly be mended. The gears of our relationship were rusting faster now. Every reconciliation after a fight was like applying a thin layer of oil. It might quiet the noise for a little while, but it couldn't stop the inevitable decay. 4. The night of no control. Our life fell back into its superficial calm. I went to school. Maya worked late at Lotus Touch, but the space between us had grown thick and heavy. We rarely spoke anymore. She no longer interrogated me about my day, and I no longer bothered sharing details about calculus or Western philosophy that she couldn't understand. Silence became the loudest noise in our tiny room. Sometimes late at night, I'd be woken by a faint, suppressed sobbing. Maya would have her back to me, her shoulders shaking silently in the dark. I'd reach out a hand to comfort her, but my fingers would freeze in midair. What could I say? That everything would be okay. I didn't even believe it myself. We were like two people trapped in separate glass boxes, able to see each other's pain, but unable to connect. The university became a kind of split reality for me. In a classroom, I could briefly escape our suffocating world and lose myself in the clean, orderly logic of academia. My professors praised my focus. "You have real potential, Nathan," one told me. "You should think about grad school." Ryan and the guys still drag me to parties and bars. In the midst of their loud, easy laughter, I try to play the part of a normal college student, laughing at their jokes, even telling a few of my own. But as soon as the laughter died down, a crushing emptiness would swallow me whole. I was living a double life. By day, I was greedily soaking up the freedom and sunshine of campus life. By night, I was shouldering the heavy, suffocating weight of the love and debt that bound me to the hive. During a sociology seminar on social mobility, I listened as my classmates cited studies and debated topics like educational equity. The grand, abstract terms floated in the air like soap bubbles. I opened my mouth to speak, but said nothing. What could I contribute? That my own educational funding was earned one massage at a time by my girlfriend in a seedy spa. That we were like two parasitic plants, clinging to each other in a crack in the city, surviving on what little nourishment we could suck from each other. This feeling of being split in two reached its peak when I received my first scholarship. It wasn't a lot of money, but to me, it was the first clean income one had ever had. I practically ran back to the hive, excited to tell Maya. I imagined using the money to take her out for a real steak dinner, not just cheap tacos from a food truck. When I burst through the door, I stopped dead. Maya was home early, squatting on the floor in front of an open suitcase. She was packing. She looked up at the sound of the door, her face a blank mask, her eyes as empty as a dried-up well. "Where are you going?" My heart plummeted. She didn't answer, just mechanically tossed a few more items of clothing into the suitcase and zipped it shut. Then she stood up, walked over to me, and handed me an envelope. I opened it. Inside was a stack of photos. They were of me and Clara, a girl from my sociology group. There were pictures of us studying in a library, talking in a coffee shop, and a few from that very afternoon, right after I got the scholarship. In the last photo, Clara was smiling and handing me a celebratory iced coffee. The angle of the shot caught us looking at each other and laughing. "You've been following me?" A cold dread crept up my spine. "Following you?" Maya let out a twisted, chilling laugh. "Nate, I don't need to follow you. Your good friend Ryan is very concerned about you. He was worried you were getting mixed up with the wrong kind of girl and sent me a little warning." She held up her phone. The screen showed an Instagram DM conversation between her and Ryan. Ryan's message was dripping with condescending concern. "Hey, just a heads up, Nate's been getting pretty close with this artsy girl, Clara. You should probably keep an eye on things. You know how some college girls can be." My blood ran cold. The normal world I was trying so hard to be a part of had just become the weapon used to stab Maya and the lock on my own cage. "Maya, listen to me. We're just classmates. We were just studying." Studying requires you to smile like that. Requires you to share drinks. Her voice escalated into a sharp, tear-filled cry. "Nate, have I been too good to you? So good that you've forgotten who you are? Forgotten who's paying for your entire existence?" She grabbed a glass from the table and hurled it against the floor. Shards flew everywhere, just like the shattered trust between us. "I can't do this anymore. I've had enough," she screamed hysterically. "I spend my days forcing smiles for disgusting men, and every single cent I make goes to you, to your education, to make you look respectable. And what do? You're laughing it up with pretty, clean college girls, planning your bright future, a future that I'm not in. Is that it, Nate? Am I in your future?" She lunged at me like a cornered animal, clawing at my shirt, beating her fists against my chest. I didn't move. I didn't fight back. I just let her unleash her pain. More than the physical blows, her words suffocated me with their accuracy. Every accusation was a poison-tipped needle, striking the deepest parts of my guilt and shame. Was she in my future? It was a question I didn't dare ask myself. When she was exhausted, she collapsed onto the floor, curling into a ball and weeping helplessly. The fierce, thorny Maya was gone, replaced by a wounded, terrified girl who was petrified of being abandoned. I slowly knelt and tried to hold her. She struggled at first, but her strength was gone. She went limp in my arms, a broken kitten, whispering over and over, "Don't leave me. Nate, please, you're all I have." In that moment, All my own anger and exhaustion dissolved into a profound, bottomless sorrow. We were like two people lost in a storm at sea, desperately clinging to each other for survival. But every time we collided, we only inflicted new wounds. I held her tight, whispering promises into her ear. I won't. I'll never leave you. We'll always be together. The words were both a comfort and a curse. We didn't fight anymore that night. Maya was like a hollow doll. I wiped her face, gave her water, and helped her into bed. I lay beside her, listening to her breathing even out, but I stared at the ceiling until dawn. I knew the ghost of those white sneakers had never left us. It had morphed into Ryan's helpful DMs, into Clara's innocent smile, into the damning photos on Maya's phone, and into every cautious word and suspicious glance that passed between us. The gears of our relationship, already rusted, were now grinding to a halt, choked by the grit of the outside world. And the scholarship money, the money I thought would be a beacon of hope, was now just a cold, heavy weight in my pocket, searing my conscience. 5. A voiceless farewell. We still lived in the hive, but the air had become thick and heavy. We stopped fighting, but we also stopped talking. She no longer checked my phone or questioned my whereabouts. I would lie awake at night, listening to her come in, her movements quiet and deliberate. She would place a stack of wrinkled bills on the table for our expenses without a word. I would take it in silence, a lump of wet cotton stuck in my throat. The white sneakers, shoved under the bed, became an unspoken taboo, a silent monument to the crack that had formed between us. The university was my only escape. I buried myself in my books, becoming a permanent fixture in the library. I dreaded going back to that suffocating room, to Maya's dead water silence. Ryan seemed to notice. Dude, you and the girlfriend on the rocks, he asked once. Just buy her some flowers or something. They love that crap. I just forced a smile. How could I explain that our problems were far beyond what flowers could fix? Clara still approached me to discuss our projects, but I became painstakingly cautious, insisting we meet in crowded public spaces, our conversations strictly academic. I knew this deliberate distance was cowardly, a betrayal of normal friendship, all to maintain a fragile, artificial peace. Maya's calm was the eerie quiet before a volcanic eruption. Her eyes, once fierce, were now mostly vacant, but occasionally a familiar, desperate glint would flash in their depths before being extinguished. She worked more, came home later, and the smells that clung to her, perfume, alcohol, and the herbal scent of massage oils, grew stronger, more desperate. One Friday night, my department hosted a film screening. I didn't want to go, but the thought of our silent apartment was worse. The movie ended late. It was raining, a fine, persistent drizzle that turned the city's neon lights into bleeding, watercolor streaks. I was walking to the bus stop when my phone rang. It was Maya. I hesitated, then answered. The background was deafening. Loud music, men's laughter, the clinking of glasses. Nate. Maya's voice was slurred. Where? Where are you? I'm on my way home. The movie just ended. Home. She giggled a sharp, ugly sound. Which home is that? The one you fancy. Ivory Tower. With all your little college girls? Maya, you're drunk. Where are you? Are you at the spa? I'll come get you. Get me? No need. Her voice suddenly rose. I got plenty of people who want to get me, Vince. Vince said he'd give me a ride in his new Mercedes. My stomach dropped. Vince. I'd heard her mention that name. A regular at the spa. A rich, sleazy guy who was always hitting on her. Maya, stop screwing around. Tell me where you are. I'm coming now. I snapped, my voice tight with anger and fear. Who's screwing around? Her voice dropped to a choked whisper. Nate, I feel sick. It's so loud here. They're all laughing. Laughing at me. 'Cause I was stupid enough to think I could have you. And now you don't want me anymore. I heard a scuffle on the other end, and a greasy male voice cut in. Maya, baby, who you talking to? Come on, have another drink with Vince. The line went dead. The dial tone buzzed in my ear like an angry insect. The cold rain soaked through my jeans. A wave of pure panic and rage washed over me. I started running, sprinting through the rain, and flagged down the first cab I saw, yelling the address for Lotus Touch. The sword that had been hanging over our heads was finally falling. When I got to the spa, its pink and purple lights glowing suggestively in the rain. A bouncer blocked my way. I was a mess, soaking wet and out of breath. I managed to explain that I was there for Maya. He eyed me suspiciously until I gave him her full name. I waited outside in the cold, each second stretching into an eternity. Finally, the door opened. It was Maya, but she wasn't alone. She was being half-carried, half-groped by a paunchy, gold chain-wearing man I recognized as Vince. Her makeup was a mess of smeared mascara and tears. Her hair was disheveled, and the top button of her uniform was undone. She saw me and froze. For a second, a flicker of clarity cut through her drunken haze, but it was quickly replaced by a deeper despair. Well, well, if it isn't the college boy, Vince sneered, looking me up and down. Here to pick up your girl? Don't worry, I've been taking real good care of her. The blood rushed to my head. I lunged forward and yanked Maya away from him. She collapsed against me, reeking of cheap whiskey. Who the hell are you? Vince bristled. I'm her boyfriend. I bit out, the words tasting like acid. Vince stared at me. Then a look of smug, ugly understanding spread across his face. Oh, so you're the one. Hey kid, if you're man enough, you should be able to support your own woman. Don't have her out here doing this kind of work. What? You like spending her money and then showing up to play the hero. His words hit their mark, a direct strike to my deepest shame. I couldn't say a word, but Maya suddenly lifted her head and laughed, a heartbreaking, desolate sound. Vince, don't say that. He's my man. He's a UT student. He's going to be a big success. I like taking care of him. It makes me happy. Her defense was more humiliating than his insults. I felt stripped bare, exposed and pathetic under the city lights. I ignored Vince, pulled Maya into another cab, and slammed the door. On the ride home, she alternated between silent tears and manic giggles, mumbling incoherently. Nate, we're finished, aren't we? That necklace. I wish it was real. I'm so tired, Nate. I'm just so tired. I held her, feeling nothing but a vast, empty sadness. We were two people drowning, clinging to each other only to pull ourselves down faster. Back at the hive, as I was wiping her face with a warm cloth, she grabbed my hand. Her eyes were suddenly sharp and sober. Nate, if I died right now, how long would you be sad? My heart seized. Don't talk like that. Answer me, she insisted. I looked at her, this girl who was woven into the very fabric of my life, who loved me with a destructive, all-consuming fire. It took me a long moment to speak. I'd be sad for the rest of my life. A strange, broken smile touched her lips. She let go of my hand and turned away. Good, she whispered. That's enough. I sat by her bed all night, listening to the rain hammer against the window, a funeral dirge for our relationship. I knew something had irrevocably broken. We might not separate tomorrow, but the agonizing, vibrant connection between us was gone, replaced by the cold silence of the end. The rain stopped just before dawn. The next few weeks passed in a haze of unspoken tension. I went to class, Maya went to work. We existed in the same small space, but at different times, two ghosts haunting the same house. The suffocating possessiveness was gone. She no longer checked my phone or questioned my whereabouts. This new silence was more terrifying than her previous rage. It was a cold, thick blanket of snow, burying everything beneath it. I tried to break through. I showed her a good grade on an essay. I told her a stupid joke I heard on campus. She would smile, a hollow, polite smile that never reached her eyes. That's nice, she'd say, and the conversation would die. She continued to leave cash for me in an old cookie tin on the table. Once, I used my scholarship money to buy a rotisserie chicken, something she used to love. She looked at it, her expression unreadable, and whispered, "Thank you." We ate in silence, the rich smell of the food only emphasizing the emptiness between us. I felt her systematically withdrawing from my life, not by leaving, but by building a wall, brick by silent brick. She was fulfilling her duty as my provider, but had revoked all the privileges of being my partner. I was no longer her lover, just a burdensome roommate she was obligated to support. The thought terrified me. I would have preferred the fights, the screaming, the destructive passion. At least then, I could feel the twisted, powerful cord that connected us. Now, the cord was still there, but it was lifeless, slowly turning to dust. In late November, a rare, fleeting flurry of snow fell over Austin. It melted the instant it hit the wet pavement, leaving behind dark, tear-like stains. That night, Maya came home early. She wasn't drunk. Her face was pale, her eyes red and swollen, but her expression was eerily calm. She was holding a small cake box. "It's my birthday," she said, her voice barely a whisper, as if announcing a fact about a stranger. I froze. I had completely forgotten. A wave of guilt so powerful it made me dizzy washed over me. I opened my mouth to say happy birthday, but the words felt cheap and empty. She opened the box herself. It was a small, generic grocery store cake with waxy frosting and garish canned fruit on top. She stuck 2 candles in it, a 1 and a 19, an age when other girls were worrying about exams and parties, and she was already a veteran of this city's brutal underbelly. She lit the candles and turned off the light. The tiny flames danced in the dark room, reflecting in her blank eyes. "Make a wish," I said, my voice hoarse. She closed her eyes. Her long lashes cast shadows on her cheeks. A few seconds later, she opened them and blew out the flames. She didn't playfully ask me to guess her wish, like she used to when we were kids. She just silently began to cut the cake. We ate in silence. The frosting was cloyingly sweet, with a bitter, artificial aftertaste. Halfway through her slice, she put down her fork and looked at me. Her eyes were perfectly calm, like a frozen lake. "Nate," she said, "I think we should break up." The words were spoken so softly, so devoid of emotion, that they hit me like a physical blow. The fork slipped from my hand and clattered onto the table. "What did you say?" I said, "We should break up," she repeated, her tone unchanged. "You should move into the dorms at Isle. I'll still give you the money for tuition and your expenses. Until you graduate." I shot to my feet, my chair scraping loudly against the concrete floor. "Why? Because of that night? Because of what Ryan said?" "Maya, I can explain." "Don't." She cut me off, a faint, exhausted smile touching her lips. "Nate, I'm tired." She looked past me, out the window at the dark, snow-dusted sky, stained red by the city's glow. "I'm scared all the time," she said softly, as if talking to herself. "Scared you'll leave me. Scared you're disgusted by me. Scared I'm not enough to make you stay. I act like a crazy person, spying on you, fighting with you. I thought if I held on tighter, I could keep you. But now I see, the tighter I grip, the more I push you away, and the further I get from the person I used to be." Her voice began to tremble, but she quickly reined it in. "Sometimes I think about us back home. We were poor, but it wasn't this hard. This person I am now. I hate her." She looked down at her own hands, the skin red and chapped from the massage oils and chemicals. "Nate, you should go. Live the life you're supposed to live. You're a college student. You have a real future. I can't. I shouldn't be dragging you down anymore." I stared at her, my heart feeling like it was being squeezed in a vice. It was the first time I had ever heard her speak with such clarity, such brutal, soul-crushing honesty. This wasn't a threat or a test. She meant it. "What about you?" I heard my own voice shake. "Me?" She looked up, and for a second, her old, defiant, self-mocking smile returned. "What about me? I can't go back home. There's always Lotus Touch, or some other place. I'll find a way to get by. Don't worry about me, Nate. I'm tough. I won't starve." In that moment, I saw the thorny, fierce Maya return, but this time, her thorns were pointed inward. She was performing a kind of self-mutilation to grant me what she believed was my freedom. Was I supposed to feel relieved, like a great weight had been lifted? I felt nothing of the sort. All I felt was a deep, drowning panic. I suddenly realized that if Maya, the string, truly let go, then I, the kite who thought he wanted to soar, would just spin out of control and be lost forever over this vast, indifferent city. I didn't agree. I didn't argue. That night, we were consumed by a silence deeper than any before. The half-eaten cake sat on the table, its frosting slowly melting, like something precious and irretrievable between us. I lay awake on the top bunk all night. Maya was motionless below me, but I knew she was awake too. Outside, the snow was falling a little harder, a soft, insistent tapping against the window. In a city that rarely saw snow, a quiet, insignificant flurry had become a blizzard, burying everything between us. 7. The migrating bird. We continued to live in a hive, but our interactions were stripped down to the bare essentials of survival. We're out of rice. Okay, I'll get more tomorrow. The utility bill is $170. The money's in the tin. Our conversations were brief, functional, and devoid of emotion, like the minimum required communication between two strangers sharing a lease. The laughter, the teasing, even the soul-tearing fights that had once filled the small space were gone. The silence itself became a deafening roar. Maya seemed to have completely given up her surveillance. She no longer cared what time I came home, who I was with, or what was on my phone. Sometimes, I would deliberately mention Clara's name just to get a reaction. She would just lift her eyelids, murmur a flat, "Oh," and her gaze would drift back to the gray patch of sky visible between the buildings. Her silence was no longer an attack. It was a profound, terrifying disengagement. She worked even harder, coming home later and later. Her body carried an alternating stench of overpowering perfume and the faint, stale odor of a long, exhausting shift. She lost weight. The purple sundress now hung loosely on her frame, her collarbones jutting out like the wings of a fragile bird. I knew that something inside her had been extinguished. The obsessive, possessive drive that had both sustained and tormented her had burned out, leaving behind only cold ash. One afternoon, I had no classes and was home. Maya was on a day off. It was a rare occasion for us to be in the same room during daylight hours. She sat on the single, rickety chair by the window, staring outside, as motionless as a statue. The weak sunlight filtered through the grimy glass, casting mottled shadows on her face, making her look distant and unreal. I tried to break the stillness. I peeled an apple and handed it to her. She took it, but didn't eat it, her fingers just tracing the smooth skin. "It's a nice day out," I said, my voice sounding unnaturally loud in the quiet room. She was silent for a long time before she finally spoke, her voice as faint as smoke. "Nate, have you ever seen migratory birds?" I was taken aback. I think once when I was a kid. They were flying really high up in a big line. "I heard a client at the spa talking about them," she said, her gaze still fixed on something far away. "He said when they migrate, they don't have maps or anything, but they can fly thousands of miles and still find their way to the exact right place." I didn't know what to say. The thought of her discussing migrating birds with a client made my stomach churn. She suddenly turned to look at me, her eyes holding a kind of innocent confusion I hadn't seen in years. "Nate, do you think sometimes they get lost? Or just get too tired to keep flying?" For a fleeting second, I saw the girl from my childhood, the one who would get excited over catching a tiny fish in the creek. The girl who had been buried under the weight of Austin and the purple lights of Lotus Touch. A wave of tenderness washed over me. "We could go out this weekend," I blurted out. "To a park or I heard there's a nature preserve outside the city. We might see some birds there." She looked at me, and a tiny flicker of light appeared in her eyes, only to be instantly extinguished. Her face settled back into its mask of placid emptiness. She pulled her lips into a pale, tired smile. "No, it's okay. It's too far, and the bus is expensive. Besides, I'll probably have to work this weekend." She turned back to the window and placed the uneaten apple on the sill. I knew, with a crushing certainty, that she wasn't just rejecting a trip. She was rejecting any attempt I made to reconnect, any possibility of rebuilding what we had lost. She was like a wounded animal, curled up and on itself, refusing to trust any offer of warmth. The end came on what seemed like an ordinary night. I came home from my evening class to find Maya already there, which was unusual. The lights were off. She was sitting in the dark, holding a thick envelope. "Nate, we need to talk," she said, her voice unnaturally calm and clear in the darkness. I flipped on the light. Her face was a blank slate, devoid of all emotion except for a chilling, resolute calm. She pushed the envelope across the table toward me. "This is your tuition for next semester, and enough living expenses for the next 6 months. I calculated it. If you're careful, it should be enough." My heart dropped into an icy abyss. What do you mean?" "I'm leaving Austin," she said, her tone as flat as if she were commenting on the weather. "I'm going to head south. A friend of a friend got me a job in a factory down in Florida. It's not great, but it's got housing and it pays better than this." The air in the room solidified. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. I had been expecting it, but hearing the words spoken aloud still felt like being struck by lightning. What? The word scraped its way out of my throat. There is no why, she said, avoiding my eyes. I'm just tired. Nate, there's no point in us dragging this out. You need to focus on your studies. You're going to have a good life. And I need to find a way to live, too. A way to live. I shot back, my voice rising. This isn't living. I can get a job. I can spend less. We can what? She cut me off, her voice finally rising, her eyes sharp and focused on mine. You spend my money while feeling guilty and ashamed of me. You live in fear of my craziness? Nate, look at us. Is this living? This is mutual torture. She took a deep breath, trying to calm herself, but her shoulders were trembling. I've thought about this a lot. You were right. I'm irrational. I'm a psycho, but it hurts to be the psycho, Nate. Every single day, it feels like I'm being burned alive. I'm terrified of losing you, and I hate myself for what I become when I'm scared. I can't take it anymore. Her voice was choked with unshed tears. Those shoes, I know they're like a thorn in your side. They're for me, too. They're a constant reminder of what stands between us. So I'm letting go, Nate. I'm not doing it to free you. I'm doing it to free myself. She stood up and picked up a small, pre-packed duffel bag. Her movements were decisive, final. Take the money, and be good. She walked to the door and paused, her hand on the knob, but she didn't look back. Then, she opened the door and walked out. The door clicked shut behind her. The soft sound echoed in my head like a gunshot. I stood frozen in the middle of the room. The space was still filled with the faint, cheap scent of her shampoo. On the windowsill, the apple one had given her was beginning to wrinkle. She was just gone. No screaming, no final desperate fight. Like a migrating bird that had finally decided it was tired of waiting for its partner, she had taken flight toward an unknown southern sky, leaving me alone in the suddenly vast, empty cage of our apartment. I slowly sank to the floor, staring at the thick, heavy envelope of cash. It felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, pinning me to the ground. It was only in that moment, with the finality of the closed door between us, that I truly understood what it felt like to lose something. All the suffocating control, the thorny neediness, now seemed like precious, painful memories. Outside, the city lights blinked on, illuminating the profound silence of my new, empty life. From now on, I was truly alone. And Maya, the wild bird from the poor, forgotten hills, her feathers tattered and torn by reality, had finally chosen to fly to a different sky. Even if that sky was just as likely to be filled with storms. The cage door was open. One bird had flown away. The other was left behind, only to discover that it hadn't found freedom, but had simply been abandoned in a much larger and much more terrifying wilderness.